Chapter 1. The Quilt on Display. The St. Mary Mead annual fair hummed with life. Laughter spilled from the tea-tent, the scent of scones drifted on the breeze, and children darted between stalls, clutching sticky toffee apples. At the heart of it all stood the handicraft table, where a quilt, vivid with crimson roses and emerald vines, drew a crowd. Miss Jane Marple sat quietly to one side, her knitting needles clicking a steady rhythm. She wore her usual tweed, a soft grey that blended with the overcast sky, but her eyes, sharp as ever, traced the quilt's edges. It was a masterpiece, no doubt, too perfect, perhaps. "Mrs. Bantry's outdone herself this year," said Clara Finch, the vicar's wife, her voice bright as she adjusted her hat. "She says it's an old family pattern. Took her months." Miss Marple's needles paused. Did she now? Her tone was mild, but her gaze lingered on a single crimson petal, slightly askew. A flaw, or a mark? Across the table, young Elsie Potter, the baker's daughter, hovered. Her fingers brushed the quilt's hem, then jerked back as if stung. "It's lovely," she muttered, her cheeks flushing. She glanced toward the tea-tent, where Mrs. Bantry stood chatting with the inspector, her laughter a touch too loud. "Lovely indeed," Miss Marple murmured. She tilted her head. Stitching was tight, precise, except for that one corner. A thread dangled faint against the green, snipped too short. Her lips curved faintly. Curious. The crowd shifted as Dr. Haydock approached, his coat flapping in the wind. "Quite the turnout," he said, nodding to Miss Marple, "though I'd wager half these folks are here for the quilt alone. Bit of a mystery, isn't it? No one's seen a pattern like it." "Nor I," Miss Marple replied. She tucked her knitting into her bag, though patterns have a way of repeating themselves, don't they? In quilts and in people. Dr. Haydock chuckled, missing the glint in her eye. "You'll be seeing mysteries in the tea leaves next, Miss Marple." "Perhaps," she said softly. The wind tugged at the quilt, lifting its edge. Beneath the roses, a shadow of ink, or was it a stain, flickered and vanished. She leaned closer. Not a tea. Not ink either. The fair carried on, oblivious. A fiddle struck up a tune, and Clara bustled off to judge the jam contest. Elsie lingered, her hands twisting in her apron, her eyes darting back to the quilt. Miss Marple watched her go, then turned to the dangling thread. She didn't touch it, not yet. "Very curious indeed," she whispered to herself. The fair's chatter faded behind her. Something about that quilt tugged at her memory. A stitch out of time, a tale half told. She smiled. The day was young. Chapter 2. A stitch out of place. The fair's afternoon sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the handicraft table. Miss Marple lingered near the quilt, her fingers tracing the air above that dangling thread. She didn't touch it. Best not to disturb what might matter later. Around her, the crowd thinned, lured away by the tug-of-war across the green. A sharp voice cut through the hum. "Elsie, stop dawdling! Those buns won't sell themselves." Mr. Potter, red-faced and flour-dusted, waved from his stall. Elsie flinched, her apron twisting tighter in her hands. She cast one last glance at the quilt before hurrying off. Miss Marple's eyes narrowed. The girl moved too quickly, her shoulders hunched. Fear or guilt? She filed it away, turning back to the quilt. That crimson petal, slightly crooked, caught the light oddly. She bent closer. Not dye. A faint smear, tacky to the eye. Footsteps crunched behind her. Still admiring it, eh? Mrs. Bantry's voice boomed, cheerful as a brass bell. She swept up, her floral dress clashing with the quilt's roses. My grandmother's design, you know. Took me ages to get it right. Did it? Miss Marple straightened, her smile gentle. Such patience, though that corner snipped a bit short, wasn't it? Mrs. Bantry's laugh faltered, a quick hiccup of sound. Oh, that! A silly mistake. Rushed the finish, I suppose. She fanned herself with a programme, her rings glinting. Hardly matters, does it? Hardly, Miss Marple echoed. Her gaze slid past Mrs. Bantry to the tea-tent, where Inspector Craddock now stood alone, scribbling in his notebook. He'd been watching the quilt too earlier. She wondered why. A clatter broke her thought. Elsie, dropping a tray of buns near the stall. Crumbs scattered, and Mr. Potter's bellow followed. Clumsy girl! Elsie scrambled to pick them up, her hands trembling. Miss Marple tilted her head. The girl's eyes flicked not to her father, but to Mrs. Bantry. Something troubles her, Miss Marple murmured. She stepped closer to the quilt, her shadow brushing its edge. The smear on the petal gleamed faintly. Rust brown, not crimson. Blood? No, too old. Paint, perhaps, or something else. Mrs. Bantry prattled on, oblivious. Everyone's talking about it, you know. Clara says it's the best thing here. Even Dr. Haydock asked if I'd sell it. Did he? Miss Marple's tone stayed light. And would you? Never! Mrs. Bantry clutched her chest, theatrical. It's a family treasure. Her smile tightened. Besides, it's not finished. Miss Marple nodded, her fingers itching for her knitting. Not finished, indeed. She glanced at Elsie, now disappearing behind the stall, then back to that odd smear. A stitch out of place, a tail out of joint. She'd seen it before, not in fabric, but in people. The sun dipped lower. The fair's noise softened, leaving a hush around the quilt. Miss Marple stepped back, her mind threading the day's first knot. Something was wrong. Very wrong. Chapter 3. Threads of Gossip. The tea-tent buzzed with chatter as the fair wound down. Miss Marple settled into a wicker chair, a cup of Earl Grey steaming in her hands. The quilt lay folded now, tucked behind the handicraft table, but its presence lingered, like a whisper no one could quite place. Clara Finch bustled over, her hat askew. Jane, you've hardly moved from that table all day. Taken with Mrs. Bantry's quilt, are you? She plopped down, fanning herself with a napkin. It's a fine piece, Miss Marple said, sipping her tea. Though I wonder about its story. Old patterns often carry them, don't they? Clara's eyes gleamed. Oh, they do. Mrs. Bantry swears it's her grandmother's. But old Mrs. Phipps, you know, the seamstress, she told me last week it reminded her of something. Couldn't say what, mind you. Her memory's not what it was. Miss Marple's cup paused mid-air. Did she now? Her voice stayed soft, but her mind turned. Mrs. Phipps had sewn for half the county once. If anyone knew a stitch's history, it was her. Across the tent, Dr. Haydock's laugh rang out. He stood with a knot of men, gesturing broadly. And I said, if that quilt's not worth a guinea, I'll eat my hat. The group chuckled, but his eyes flicked toward the handicraft table, quick as a dart. "Dr. Haydock seems fond of it too," Miss Marple murmured. Clara leaned in, voice dropping. "Fond? Obsessed, more like. He's been asking Mrs. Bantry odd questions. Where she found the pattern, how long she's had it. And then there's Elsie Potter. Poor girl's been jumpy as a cat all day. I saw her staring at that quilt like it'd bite her." Miss Marple nodded, her fingers brushing the saucer. "She did seem distracted." "Distracted?" Clara snorted. "Terrified, I'd say. And Mr. Potter's no help, barking at her every minute, though—" She hesitated, glancing around. "There's talk he's in debt again. Owed money to Lady Beatrice, rest her soul, before she passed last month." "Lady Beatrice?" Miss Marple's tone lifted, just a touch. "Oh, yes, that grand old bat up at the manor. Died sudden, they say. Heart gave out." Clara sipped her tea, oblivious to the spark in Miss Marple's eye. "Left a mess of debts and secrets behind her, if you believe the whispers." The tent flap rustled. Elsie slipped in, tray in hand, her face pale. She set a plate of scones down with a clink, her gaze darting to Miss Marple, then away. "More tea, ma'am?" she mumbled. "Thank you, dear," Miss Marple said kindly. Elsie's hand shook as she poured, a drop spilling onto the cloth. She flinched, wiping it fast. Clara clucked her tongue. "Steady on, girl. You'll ruin the table." Elsie muttered an apology and fled. Miss Marple watched her go, then leaned back. Lady Beatrice. Debts. A quilt with a smear and a snipped thread. The gossip twisted like threads in her mind, loose but tangling fast. Outside, the fair's fiddle faded into dusk. Miss Marple finished her tea, the cup warm against her palm. Stories indeed, she said to herself. The quilt's tale was growing louder. She'd listen closer tomorrow. Chapter 4. The Midnight Visitor. The fairgrounds lay silent under a sliver of moon. Stalls stood empty, their banners limp in the night air. Miss Marple's cottage window glowed faintly. She'd left the fair hours ago, but sleep eluded her. Her knitting lay idle as she turned a page in her book. Then a creak. Not hers. She stilled, ears sharp. Beyond the hedge, a shadow moved, quick, low, towards the fair shed. The quilt was there, locked up for the night. Her lips pursed. "Well now," she whispered, setting the book aside. Slipping on her shawl, she eased the door open. The village slept, save for the rustle of leaves and that faint, persistent crunch of gravel. She peered through the hedge. A figure crouched, by the shed, fumbling at the lock. A glint, metal, a tool, not a key. Miss Marple stepped onto the path, silent as a cat. The figure stiffened, head snapping up. A scarf masked their face, but the moonlight caught a limp, slight, favouring the left leg. Then a snap. The lock gave. The door creaked open, and they vanished inside. She waited, breath steady. A minute passed, then two. A muffled curse drifted out, sharp against the stillness. The figure emerged, empty-handed, scarf slipping, to reveal a lock of dark hair. They bolted, limping toward the woods. Miss Marple didn't follow. She crossed to the shed instead, her slippers soft on the damp grass. The door hung ajar, the lock dangling like a broken toy. Inside, the quilt lay untouched on its shelf. but the corner with the snipped thread was flipped up, as if searched. She bent closer. The smear on the crimson petal gleamed faintly. Its edges flaked. Not paint. Something older, stickier. Her fingers hovered, then drew back. "Someone's in a hurry," she murmured. A twig snapped behind her. She turned, calm. Inspector Craddock loomed in the doorway, lantern in hand, his coat rumpled. "Miss Marple, what the devil are you doing out here?" "Taking the air," she said mildly. "And you, Inspector?" He frowned, lifting the light. "Heard a noise from the station. Thought I'd check. Looks like I'm not the only one." His gaze swept the shed, landing on the quilt. "Anything missing?" "Not that I can see." She stepped aside, letting him peer at the flipped corner. His brow creased, but he said nothing. "Odd time for a stroll," he muttered, scribbling in his notebook. "I'll have a man watch this place tomorrow." "A wise idea," Miss Marple agreed. She glanced at the woods, where the limping shadow had fled. "Though I dare say the night's work is done." Craddock grunted, unconvinced. He tipped his hat and trudged off, lantern bobbing. Miss Marple lingered, her eyes on that smear. A limp, a scarf, a desperate search. The quilt wasn't just a prize, it was a risk. Back in her cottage, she locked the door and picked up her knitting. The needles clicked, steady as a pulse. She smiled faintly. "Very impatient, aren't they?" The threads were tightening. She'd tug them loose soon enough. Chapter 5. The Pattern Emerges. Morning crept over St. Mary Mead, mist curling around the cottages. Miss Marple sat at her breakfast table, toast untouched, a cup of tea cooling beside her. Her knitting lay nearby, but her mind stitched something else, a pattern from last night's shadows. She rose, smoothing her skirt, and fetched her hat. Mrs. Phipps lived a short walk away, her tiny house sagging under ivy. The old seamstress rarely left it now, but her memory, though frayed, held threads Miss Marple needed. The door creaked open at her knock. Mrs. Phipps peered out, her eyes milky behind thick glasses. "Jane Marple, what brings you here so early?" "A question, if I may," Miss Marple said, stepping inside. The air smelled of lavender and dust, shelves lined with spools and faded fabric. "About a quilt." Mrs. Phipps shuffled to a chair, her cane tapping. "That Bantry woman's, I suppose. Clara's been nattering about it, said it looked familiar." "Did it?" Miss Marple settled opposite, her hands folded. "Familiar how?" The old woman frowned, fingers tracing the air, as if stitching. "The roses, crimson with vines curling just so. I've seen it, or something like it, years back." She paused, brow creasing. "Up at the manor, maybe. Lady Beatrice's time." Miss Marple's pulse quickened, though her face stayed serene. "Lady Beatrice?" "Aye. She had a quilt. Grand thing, hung in the parlour, made by her sister, they said, before she ran off. Scandal, that was." Mrs. Phipps clucked her tongue. "Never saw it after Beatrice died. Burned, I reckon, with half her things." "Burned," Miss Marple echoed softly. "Or remade?" Mrs. Phipps blinked, then shrugged. "Could be. Stitches don't lie, though. That pattern, it's got a feel to it, angry almost." Miss Marple nodded, her mind turning. Angry stitches. A smear that wasn't paint. A limp in the dark. She rose, thanking Mrs. Phipps with a smile. "You've been most helpful." Back on the lane, the village stirred. Milk bottles clinked, a dog barked. Miss Marple walked slowly, piecing it together. Lady Beatrice's quilt, lost to scandal, now reborn on Mrs. Bantry's table. But why? And that Ascot raced past, its nose brushing the shed's open door. She paused at the fairgrounds, the quilt still on its shelf, untouched, since midnight. The crimson petal gleamed in the daylight, its smear stark against the fabric. She tilted her head. Not just a mark, a message, perhaps, sewn into the threads. A shout broke her reverie. Dr. Haydock strode across the green, his limp slight but unmistakable, favouring the left. He waved, cheerful. "Morning, Miss Marple. Fine day, isn't it?" "Very fine," she replied, her eyes on his gait. The same limp she'd seen in the moonlight. "Enjoying the fair?" "Oh, immensely." He grinned, but his hand tightened on his cane. "That quilt's the star, don't you think?" "Quite the star," she agreed. She watched him go, his shadow stretching long. The pattern was emerging, scandal, debt, and a quilt that wouldn't stay buried. She smiled faintly. Time to pull the next thread. Chapter 6. A Nervous Hand. The fair's second day dawned crisp, the green bustling anew. Miss Marple stood near the tea-tent, her knitting bag slung over, her arm watching the crowd swirl around the quilt. Its crimson roses seemed brighter today, as if daring her to look closer. Elsie Potter emerged from the bakery stall, a tray of buns wobbling in her grip. Her apron was smudged, her eyes red-rimmed. She set the tray down with a clatter, glancing at the quilt, then away. Miss Marple stepped forward, her voice soft as a breeze. "Good morning, Elsie. Those buns look lovely." Elsie started, nearly dropping a cloth. "Oh, Miss Marple, thank you. I didn't see you there." Her fingers twisted the cloth, knuckles white. "No trouble, dear." Miss Marple smiled, settling onto a bench nearby. "Busy day, I imagine. Your father must be pleased." Elsie's laugh was thin, brittle. "Pleased? He's never pleased. Always shouting about something. Buns too small, trays too slow." She darted a look at the quilt again, her breath catching. Miss Marple followed her gaze. "Mrs. Bantry's quilt does draw the eye, doesn't it? Such a bold pattern." "Bold? Yes," Elsie mumbled. Her hand stilled, then jerked back to the tray. "Too bold, maybe. I don't know why she'd make it, don't you?" Miss Marple's tone stayed light, her needles clicking as she pulled out her knitting. "I'd have thought it a comfort, working on something so fine. Though it's curious, those roses, almost like the ones Lady Beatrice favoured." Elsie's tray tipped. A bun rolled off, landing in the grass. She froze, staring at it, then at Miss Marple. "Lady Beatrice, what's that got to do with it?" "Oh, nothing, perhaps." Miss Marple bent to retrieve the bun, brushing it off. "Just an old woman's fancy. Here you are." Elsie took it, her hand trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. Her eyes flicked to the tea-tent, where Mrs. Bantry laughed with Clara Finch, then back to the quilt. It's too much like her, like she's still here." Miss Marple's needles paused. "Is it now?" She watched Elsie's face, pale, pinched, a bead of sweat on her brow. "You knew her well, then?" "No!" Elsie's voice cracked too loud. Heads turned. She flushed, lowering it. "No, I just heard things from Father. He worked for her sometimes. Deliveries, you know." "Of course," Miss Marple said gently. "Bread and secrets travel together, don't they?" Elsie's mouth opened, then snapped shut. She grabbed the tray and bolted back to the stall, nearly tripping over a chair. Miss Marple watched her go, her knitting resuming its rhythm. Secrets, indeed. The girl was a frayed thread, ready to snap. A shadow fell across her. Dr. Haydock leaned on his cane, his smile tight. "Troubling the young ones, Miss Marple?" "Hardly," she replied, looking up. "Just chatting, though Elsie seems unsettled." "Unsettled?" He chuckled, but his grip on the cane whitened. "She's a nervous sort. Always has been." "She?" Miss Marple's eyes met his, calm and clear. "I wonder why." He shifted, his limp more pronounced as he turned away. "Youth, I suppose. Good day, Miss Marple." He strode off, faster than necessary. She leaned back, the quilts, roses vivid in her mind. Elsie's fear, Dr. Haydock's haste. A nervous hand had stitched this tale. She'd find the needle soon. Chapter 7. The Torn Patch. The fair's afternoon sun slanted low, gilding the quilt on its table. Miss Marple approached, her steps measured, her knitting bag bumping her hip. The crowd had thinned. Tea and gossip had lured most away, but she preferred the quiet. It sharpened her focus. She stopped before the quilt, her eyes tracing its vines. The snipped thread still dangled, the smear still gleamed, but something new caught her. A patch near the bottom right, emerald green puckered slightly. Torn, then hastily mended. She bent closer, her breath stirring the fabric. A faint rustle. Paper? She glanced around. No one near. Her fingers brushed the patch, feeling a crinkle beneath. Not just thread. Something hidden. She didn't lift it, not yet. Evidence needed care. Footsteps thudded behind her. Inspector Craddock loomed, his hat askew. "Miss Marple again. You've a knack for hovering where trouble brews." "Trouble?" She straightened, smiling faintly. "Only curiosity, Inspector. This quilt's a puzzle, isn't it?" He snorted, peering at it. "A puzzle worth breaking into a shed for, apparently. My man found fresh scratches on the lock this morning. Someone's keen." "Very keen," she agreed. Her gaze slid to the torn patch. "Though I wonder what they're after." Craddock frowned, following her look. "What's that? A tear?" "Mended, I think." She stepped back, letting him see. Clumsily, though, as if in haste. He crouched, squinting. "Odd stitching. Mrs. Bantry's work's usually neater." His fingers hovered, then drew back. "Could be nothing." "Could be," Miss Marple said softly, "or something tucked away." Craddock's eyes sharpened. "You think there's more to this quilt than roses?" "I think," she replied, "it's telling us more than Mrs. Bantry intended," grunted, standing. "I'll have it looked at. Properly, mind, not by fairground meddlers." He tipped his hat and strode off, calling for a constable. Miss Marple lingered, her mind threading the clues. A hidden paper, a midnight search, Elsie's fear, Dr. Haydock's limp, Lady Beatrice's shadow. She glanced toward the bakery stall. Elsie was absent, but Mr. Potter barked orders, his face thunderous. "Debt," Clara had said, to Lady Beatrice. Breeze tugged the quilt, lifting the torn patch. The crinkle sounded again, faint but real. She clasped her hands, resisting the urge to peek. "Patience," she murmured. The quilt was unravelling itself, stitch by stitch. Mrs. Bantry's laugh rang out from the tea-tent, too bright, too forced. Miss Marple turned, watching her wave a teacup, rings flashing. The woman hadn't noticed the patch, not yet. But someone had. Someone desperate. The constable arrived, a young man with a notepad, and began cordoning the table. Miss Marple stepped away, her knitting needles clicking in her mind. A torn patch, a hidden truth. The tale was taking shape. She'd wait for its next fold. Chapter 8. Shadows in the stitching dusk settled over St. Mary Mead. The fairgrounds hushed save for the rustle of leaves. Miss Marple stood by her garden gate, watching the constable haul the quilt away in a burlap sack. Inspector Craddock had promised answers by morning. Police work, he'd said, not guesswork. She smiled faintly. Guesswork had its uses. Inside she lit a lamp, its glow pooling on her parlour table. Her knitting stayed in its bag. Tonight called for tea and thought. The torn patch nagged at her. Paper, yes, but why hide it? And that smear, too dark for chance. A knock rattled the door. She opened it to find Clara Finch, breathless, her hat clutched in one hand. "Jane, you'll never believe it. Old Tom the gardener's dead." Miss Marple's brows lifted. "Dead? When?" "This afternoon, they say." Clara bustled in, collapsing into a chair. Found him by the manor gate, stiff as a board. Heart, Dr. Haydock reckons, but... She leaned closer, voice dropping. He was clutching a scrap of green thread, like that quilt's. Was he? Miss Marple poured tea, her hand steady. Poor Tom. He worked for Lady Beatrice, didn't he? Years ago, yes. Kept the grounds till she died. Odd jobs after. Clara sipped, then shuddered. 2 deaths in a month. Beatrice and now Tom. It's uncanny. Uncanny indeed. Miss Marple's eyes drifted to the window. Tom, gruff, quiet Tom, dead with a thread in his fist. She pictured the quilt, emerald vines, a torn patch. Shadows in the stitching. Clara prattled on. Mrs. Bantry's beside herself. Says the fair's cursed, and Elsie Potter's vanished. Hasn't been at the stall since noon. Vanished! Miss Marple's cup paused mid-air. Curious timing. Isn't it? Mr. Potter's raging, of course. Says she's shirking. But I saw her this morning, white as a ghost, staring at that quilt like it'd swallow her. Miss Marple nodded, her mind threading the day. Tom's death. Elsie's flight. The quilt, now in Craddock's hands. She rose, fetching a biscuit tin. And Dr. Haydock, did he say more about Tom? Just the heart business. Looked shaken, though. Limped off quick when I asked. Clara took a biscuit, crumbs scattering. You don't think... I don't think anything yet, Miss Marple said gently. Though threads have a way of tangling, don't they? Clara blinked, then laughed. You and your threads, Jane. I'll leave you to it. She bustled out, hat still in hand. Miss Marple locked the door, the lamp flickering. Tom clutching green. Lady Beatrice gone sudden. The quilt hiding paper and smears. She sat, staring. At the flame. Not heart failure, not both. Poison, perhaps, subtle and slow. She'd seen it before, in a village not unlike this one. The clock ticked. Shadows stretched across the room, mirroring the quilt's vines. Miss Marple's lips curved. "A killer's tale," she murmured. The stitches were loosening. She'd pull them free soon. Chapter 9. The Confession Unravelled. The fairgrounds lay abandoned by morning, stalls stripped bare under a grey sky. Miss Marple walked the lane to the police station, her shawl tight against the chill. Inspector Craddock had sent word the quilt's secret was out. She suspected it wouldn't be the whole tale. Inside, the station smelled of ink and damp wool. Craddock stood by a table, the quilt spread before him, its torn patch slit open. A yellowed paper lay beside it, creased and smudged. He looked up, grim. "Miss Marple, you'll want to see this." She approached, peering at the paper. Scrawled ink, faded but legible. "Beatrice knows. She'll ruin us. The dose must be tonight." No signature, just a jagged tear at the bottom. "Found it stitched inside," Craddock said, tapping the patch. "It's someone's confession, or plan." "Or both," Miss Marple murmured. She traced the quilt's vines with her eyes. "Who's us, I wonder?" Craddock grunted. "That's the rub. Could be anyone. Half the village owed Lady Beatrice money or favours. And now Tom's dead, clutching thread like this." He held up a green scrap, its edges frayed. Miss Marple nodded, her face serene. "A busy quilt. Where's Mrs. Bantry?" "Next room." Shaken, but talking. He jerked his head. "Care to join?" She followed him into a small office. Upstairs, Bantry sat hunched, her floral dress crumpled, a handkerchief twisted in her hands. She looked up, eyes wide. "Miss Marple! Tell them it's nonsense. I'd never—" "Never what?" Miss Marple settled across from her, voice gentle. "So a secret, perhaps?" Mrs. Bantry's laugh was shrill. "A secret? That quilt's my grandmother's pattern, nothing more. I found the paper when I started it, tucked in an old sewing box. Thought it was rubbish. Did you?" Miss Marple tilted her head. "Yet you hid it so carefully." "I didn't hide it." Mrs. Bantry's rings flashed as she waved her hands. I stitched it in by mistake. Panicked, you see, when I read it. Didn't know what it meant till Tom died." Craddock leaned in. "And you didn't think to tell us?" "I was scared." Her voice cracked. "Beatrice died so sudden, then, that note, I thought someone might come for me next." Miss Marple's eyes softened, but her mind stayed sharp. "Someone did come, didn't they? The shed, that night." Mrs. Bantry froze, then sagged. "Yes, I heard the noise, saw a shadow limping off. I didn't dare look closer." "A limp," Miss Marple said quietly. "Like Dr. Haydock's." Craddock's pen scratched faster. Mrs. Bantry paled. "Dr. Haydock? No, he wouldn't." "He asked about the quilt, yes, but asked how?" Miss Marple pressed, her tone still mild. "Where I got it, how long I'd had it." Mrs. Bantry's handkerchief shredded in her grip. "He seemed nervous, kept saying it was valuable." Miss Marple nodded, glancing at Craddock. "Valuable indeed." She rose, smoothing her shawl. "Thank you, Mrs. Bantry. You've been most helpful." Outside, Craddock lit a cigarette, exhaling sharply. "She's half lying. That note didn't stitch itself." "Half lying, yes," Miss Marple agreed. "But not the killer. Too clumsy for poison, and too loud for secrets." He squinted at her. "You've got someone in mind?" "Perhaps." She smiled faintly, the quilt's threads twisting in her head. Dr. Haydock's limp, Elsie's fear, Tom's death. The note was a confession, but not the full one. The needle was still out there. Chapter 10. The Final Thread. The police station hummed with quiet tension. Miss Marple sat in Craddock's office. The quilt spread before them, its secrets bared. The note lay beside it, its ink stark against the yellowed paper. Dr. Haydock stood by the window, his cane tapping an uneven rhythm, his face tight. Craddock paced, his voice clipped. "We've got the note, Doctor. The dose must be tonight. And Tom, dead with your thread in his hand. Care to explain?" Dr. Haydock's laugh was dry, brittle. "My thread? Half the village wears green, Inspector, and I'm a doctor, not a poisoner." "Yet you limped to the shed," Miss Marple said softly, her eyes on his cane. "Searching, perhaps?" He stiffened, grip whitening. I wanted the quilt. It's valuable, yes. Asked Bantry to sell it. She wouldn't. Thought I'd look closer." "Valuable how?" Craddock snapped. "Antique value," Dr. Haydock muttered. "Old patterns fetch a price, that's all." Miss Marple tilted her head, her knitting needles clicking faintly in her bag. "Not all, I think. That smear on the petal. Arsenic leaves such a mark, doesn't it? When it dries, Dr. Haydock's cane stilled." Craddock froze, then turned to the quilt, squinting at the crimson stain. "Arsenic? You're sure?" "Not sure," Miss Marple said. "But likely? Lady Beatrice died sudden. Heart, they said. Tom too. And that note. A dose suggests poison, doesn't it?" Dr. Haydock's jaw tightened. "You're guessing, Miss Marple. I treated Beatrice. Her heart failed. Natural causes." "Did it?" Her voice stayed gentle. "Or did someone help it along? Someone close, someone scared?" A knock interrupted. A constable poked his head in. "Sir, we've found Elsie Potter, hiding in the woods, hysterical, keeps saying she's sorry." Craddock cursed under his breath. "Bring her." Minutes later, Elsie stumbled in, her apron torn, her face streaked with dirt. She saw the quilt and shrank back, a sob escaping. "I didn't mean it. I didn't." "Didn't mean what?" Craddock barked. Miss Marple rose, stepping closer. "Elsie, dear, tell us about Lady Beatrice." Elsie's eyes darted wild. She knew about father's debts, threatened to take the bakery. I heard her, laughing about it. Said we'd be out by Christmas. "And the quilt," Miss Marple pressed, calm as ever. Elsie's hands twisted. It was hers, old, from the manor. Father took it after she died, said it'd pay what we owed, gave it to Mrs. Bantry to finish. But I found the note in her sewing box. She'd written it, meant to poison someone. I stitched it in, thought it'd keep her quiet, even dead." Craddock blinked. "You hid her own confession?" Elsie nodded, trembling. "Then Tom saw me with it, said he'd tell, knew it was hers. I gave him tea, just a bit of the stuff, from father's shed. Didn't think it'd kill him." Miss Marple sighed, a faint sadness in her eyes. "Arsenic, Elsie. A bit is enough." Dr. Haydock slumped, his cane clattering. "I suspected Beatrice's. Death was too neat. Checked the quilt for proof. Found nothing till you meddled." Craddock stared, then grabbed his notepad. "Elsie Potter, you're under arrest. Doctor, you're not clear yet." Miss Marple stepped back, the quilt's threads finally loose. Elsie, not Dr. Haydock, had pulled the fatal stitch, fearful, clumsy, trapped by debt. The twist clicked. Lady Beatrice's plan had outlived her, poisoning through a girl's panic. Chapter 11. The quilt laid bare the police station settled into quiet as evening fell. Miss Marple sat in Craddock's office, the quilt folded neatly on the table,